Our next speaker is Kim Sparshott. Kim has worked as a botanist with both the Queensland Herbarium and the Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service. She currently manages a business with her husband and 2 sons, undertaking flora and fauna surveys, vegetation mapping, and providing that's a big word, Kim. Arboricultural services for ecological applications. And Robert Prestipino, thanks Kim. This must be time for afternoon tea. Helps regional communities create better places for lifestyle, employment and the environment. He's a qualified urban designer, registered landscape architect, corporate member of the Planning Institute of Australia and an Australian certified economic developer. Thanks Kim and Robert.
Thanks, Jen. The Dingo Mountain project could be seen as an example of a northern connection that's living on the edge. Why? Once I get this going. Well, for multiple reasons actually, but perhaps the most obvious is its location here on the edge of a township that's just north of Toowoomba. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kim Sparshott, as Jen mentioned. I'm from Leaftail Environmental. This is Robert Prestipino from Vital Places. When the conference program came out, I noticed that our segment this afternoon is also living on the edge. So, because it sits on the edge of the 2 themes. So yeah, hopefully we have an opportunity to provide a relevant transition into the next theme this afternoon. So we'll be exploring the notion of being on the edge from a number of angles, including the significance of ecosystem edge effects, or as our title suggests, how boundaries boost biodiversity. And I'll go into that more later in the presentation, but firstly Robert's going to share some insights into some background context actually, and later he'll discuss the second aspect of our title, namely how our project is building stronger communities.
Thanks, Kim. This way. The clicker.
Yep.
Thank you. Yes, well, firstly, where is our project? It is just 40 kilometres up the road, up New England Highway, as Kim said, on the edge of town. This project was driven a long time ago by a local community and volunteers that were passionate about the landscapes around the town, and there was a reputation that this site had significant existing intact flora and fauna. The interesting part of the site though was that the fact that it was privately owned and subdivided for residential development. It was effectively 9 blocks of land that was purchased by the charity, a local environmental charity, in 2017 to protect the site. That was mainly remnant vegetation. And the funding of that was through the local community bank that had funds for community investment. And what they did after that too, they approached Toowoomba Regional Council to actually downzone the land, which council had never done before, to environmental services, so this land could never be sold in its parcels for residential development. A year later, adjacent to the site, they secured a trust as a trustee from state government land. It's referred to the police paddock, which spread the 41 hectares into about 57 hectares of the site. And when you look from a regional significance point of view on the edge of town, it's quite a large parcel that the charity's under control of and is effectively an owner of 41 hectares of it, but it abuts council land and you can see the national park areas as well. Around 2022, we realised, well, through the board realised they needed to move forward to develop some master planning of how might we develop this as a community asset. So the first thing, it's really when I got involved in the project, the reality was there was lots of local reputation, but there wasn't one single plan or map or anything on paper to help us understand how we could enhance community access to this site. So in 2022, we commissioned a landscape architect to simply do a desktop audit to develop scaled plans of the site and also start collecting some of the local data from stakeholders In the process of the audit, there was also a community engagement workshop where we dealt with key local groups, the university, also the university's Indigenous Liaison Officer, really just to try and to map on a plan to scale what might be on the site and what might be some of the vegetative areas. And again, as this was simply the first mapping process where we were really collating from walking the site and really inputs from the local experts, we began to realise very quickly that there was a lot happening on the site, and if we were going to develop trails into that area that would promote education and retention of the site, everyone had a lot of ideas of what could be done, but it became immediate to the board, and also it was the first recommendation in the Landscape Architect's action plan, was before we do anything on the site, we need to have the flora fauna mapped to scale, spatially, to know where the heck we could put a trail or not put a trail. And really, that initiated the commission that Kim's work started, and little did we know at that point that this was going to be such a profound study that has completely reshaped the way we've been thinking about master planning this site. So I'll hand it over to Kim.
Thanks, Robert. Yeah, well, it's been fantastic to be involved in this project just because Dingo Mountain is such an interesting and scenic and very biodiverse area. So it's a real biodiversity hotspot. And as I'll explain, there's a number of factors that contribute to this, and in general, they relate back to the concept of boundaries or edge effects. So firstly, underpinning Dingo Mountain's biodiversity is the fact that the reserve's ecosystems are living on the edge of the Great Dividing Range. About a laser pointer. So this major geographic feature does exactly that. It divides bioregions, so based on factors such as climatic conditions and soils. And while Dingo Mountain falls into the southeast Queensland bioregion, it's also very close, only 5 kilometres actually, from the boundary of the Brigalow Belt bioregion. And to explain the significance of this, if we consider biodiversity at the scale of individual communities, ecotonal zones are generally renowned for their biodiversity and for their species richness. But even when we move up to the broader landscape scale, this ecotonal effect is still apparent. So consequently, much of Dingo Mountain's unique species suite can be attributed to being situated in the zone that's essentially an ecotone on a regional scale. And its flora and fauna communities are impacted by the driving environmental forces behind each of these bioregions. So this has the effect of boosting the number of species found in the area. Floristically, Dingo Mountain also has many affinities with Hellhole Gorge, which is part of Main Range National Park, in spite of it being an area that's 100 kilometres further to the south. So Hellhole Gorge is also an area that's known for its biodiversity, and comparably it sits only 2 kilometres from the southeast Queensland Brigalow Belt bioregion boundary. Then contributing further to the site's biodiversity is the influence of geology. So the site can be divided into 2 distinct geology types, and these the Crow's Nest Creek, for the most part at least, forms this very distinct boundary between the 2 geology types. So it features 2 different substrates, sandstone and granite, and the reserve shares common species with a number of other areas that are also known for their biodiversity. So firstly, in the area west of Crow's Nest Creek, in the Dingo Mountain, which is the Dingo Mountains section, the soils are derived from sandstone, quartzose sandstone, and the area features many impressive outcrops, such as this, and rock shelves and big boulders. So these formations are reminiscent of the Helidon Hills just east of Toowoomba, and that's known as a wildflower hotspot also. Not surprisingly, its flora suite contains elements that are comparable to the sandstone-based vegetation in Dingo Mountain. In contrast, just across the creek is the police paddock section of the overall Dingo Mountain area, and this section overlies granite. So in terms of rock outcrops and formations, there's nothing on the scale of the granite belt, the Queensland's granite belt on the New England tablelands, but nevertheless there's some interesting areas of rock pavement and with its associated heathy species. So the police paddock also features a number of species that are typically associated with the granite belt, and as I said, that falls within the New England tablelands bioregion. So you can see that the site actually displays affinities with 3 different bioregions. And the resultant biodiversity is apparent in the number of species recorded during our survey. So a total of 553 flora species, and this is the breakdown here of the major groups. As you can see, we did survey all groups, although there's no doubt that there'll be further taxa that we didn't find in some of those non-vascular groups. But of the vascular flora, however, 350 species were actually native to the area, and this included 15 different eucalypt species, plus 3 Angophora species. We also recorded 42 legumes, of which 14 of those were wattles, because they've all been lumped together into the Leguminosae family now. 48 daisies, 16 orchids, 24 sedges, so from the Cyperaceae family, and a whopping 57 grass species. And interestingly, Lomandra was the 4th largest genus in the area, so it's a real Lomandra hotspot with 9 species, and one of these is likely to be a new species. So apart from its species richness, the site is also significant because it supports disjunct populations and species which occur at or near the extremities of their distribution range, such as these examples here. But I think the plant species of greatest individual significance, though, is a small myrtaceous shrub called fringe beckia, or Beckia diosmifolia. It's an interesting example of a disjunct population, which occurs way over at the opposite boundary of the bioregion to the majority of sites where this species had been recorded. And I say had been recorded because whilst fringe beckia once occurred in near coastal areas, such as the southern suburbs of Brisbane and on the Gold Coast, sadly urban development has now driven these populations to extinction. So Dingo Mountain now serves as its only currently known refuge within Queensland. It does still occur though in coastal and subcoastal areas in New South Wales from about Coffs Harbour to Jervis Bay, and with that in mind we're looking to pursue the possibility of engaging someone to do some genetic work on this species in order to determine the uniqueness of the Dingo Mountain population, and if it's found to be significantly distinct from those in New South Wales, that could provide justification for having the species listed under the Queensland Nature Conservation Act. So moving on from individual species, the area is also very diverse at the plant community scale. We identified 8 different vegetation types, which is quite high for an area of only 56 hectares, and they could be classified into 7 different regional ecosystems, or REs. 3 of these REs were not previously mapped in the area, and on the other hand, some of the REs shown on the existing mapping were found to not actually be present in Dingo Mountain or even within the Crow's Nest district at all. So this necessitated an additional task on top of our initial main flora-fauna survey, which was the remapping of some areas both within and beyond the Dingo Mountain area in order to correct the REs as well as to facilitate edge matching with the existing RE mapping. And I'll just mention one RE in particular that stands out as being quite significant, and this is 12, 9, 10, 20. You can read the description there. This RE is protected only in Croombit Tops and Wawunga National Park, which are up in the northern part of the bioregion, the southeast Queensland bioregion. And boosting its significance is the fact that this version of the RE, or the version of the RE present in Dingo Mountain and in the adjoining Hartman Park, contains this particular suite of species, which does not occur anywhere else. So our survey highlighted not only the significance of individual species, but overall the fragility of much of the site. So with the board's intention being to develop walking trails, we needed to consider the impact of their proposed trail plan, which you can see here. So as an overlay to this, and based on the findings of our study, we identified and mapped 4 environmental sensitivity zones. So these pinkish areas that you can see over on the right-hand side, mostly, are deemed highly susceptible to disturbance, and there were walking tracks traversing these areas in the board's original proposal. So on the steep, rocky eastern side of the main ridge line, and along the top of the gully over here, which is the only habitat for Beckia, the fringe Beckia, and also over in the far right in the police paddock on the fragile rock pavement communities. So you can see that our surveys had a direct impact on the preferred trail network by simplifying it down to just those areas that are sustainable. So Robert's going to sum up now with some evolving future opportunities in addition to these proposed projects, which I look forward to being involved in as part of Leaftail Environmental's ongoing input into Dingo Mountain. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. You got the clicker? This is a very quick ending, but sort of the where to from here is 3 key things we're facing and moving forward. And these opportunities are really one of joint management, because as you can see from the context, our site has effectively a lot of council land adjacent to it that has very similar habitat. So the issues of particularly the council reserve management with we've got sedimentation issues of Dingo Mountain Road, which is a dirt road leaching into the site, as well as council site. The biosecurity planning of the site needs joint management, as well as our fire management approach. So that's a big issue around joint management. For the board, the business case is really important in the sense of sustainability, not only from an environmental point of view. There are holding costs for this parcel of land because it's privately owned, and we need a business case that can generate a revenue. So that's part of the challenge as well. And we're looking at effectively the significance of the site, which seems to be more and more as we look into it, as its potential regional significance, and the sort of strategic partners, whether the universities and others that are already engaged with this site. So how we might develop that through the business case to fund the future environmental research and education opportunities. But the community involvement has been particularly challenging. We haven't got the answers yet, but as you can see from the site was bought as a community asset with the goal to allow community access. Our early workshops, the community said to us, well, actually, this is so important, you need to control community access and not degrade it. So the issue of how do we manage visitors that's sustainable, which was really important with Kim's work. How do we manage volunteers on a site that's fairly intact and we need to manage? And then how do we deal and manage the governance of supporters, whether it's financial or other ways around the site? So they're the 3 big areas we're working on at the moment. We hope we'll have some structure. If anyone can help us, we'd be most welcome to talk about it. And I suppose at the end, this Dingo Mountain is something from very little ideas to something that is turning out to be quite significant. Thank you.